I think we can start this webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on the implementation of the SCA ecosystem accounting, on the recent country experiences and the path to synergies to the global biodiversity framework. As you might know, the system of environmental economic accounting was developed to create an integrated framework that could measure the interrelationship between the environment and the economy, and therefore enhance our understanding of the environmental benefits to humanity and also the impact of the economy on the environment. So you know the SCA plays a crucial role in informing policy and decision-making processes, and they provide a consistent and integrated set of information based on clear concept, definition, and classification to allow monitoring of policies and the understanding of the trade-off between different policies. So this webinar is part of a webinar series on the uses of the SCA for policy. And the series, this webinar series aims to showcase the benefit of the SCA and explore specific policy area that the SCA can contribute to. And the first two webinars that we had from this webinar series focus specifically on the link of the SCA with the global biodiversity framework. Now, the webinar series is organized by the UN Committee of Experts on Environmental Economic Accounts, which is a group of experts established by the Statistical Commission to advance the program on environmental accounts. And it brings together countries and international organizations, both compiling and using the information in the SCA. Today we have an excellent lineup. I'm very proud to have a very distinguished list of speakers and moderator as well. So I can wait to pass the floor and to start this webinar. But before I do so, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. I would like to thank all the speakers for making time to present their experience in the compilation of the accounts. Of course, Jono and Mandy, a big thank you for moderating and creating this agenda for the webinar. But also I would like to thank the Environmental Economic Accounting team, Jessica Chan, Marco Javorsek, Marinella Cirillo, Elsa Begne, who are working behind the scene to make this webinar happen. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to Jono Koo, who is the Acting Program Manager, Physical Environmental Accounts and Statistics at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and is the chair of the Working Group on Coordination and Communication of the UN Committee of Experts on Environmental Economic Accounts. So without further ado, Jono, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ilaria, and hello, everybody. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm on today. So I'm coming to you from Turrbal and Jagera country. So that's in Brisbane, Australia. It's just a little bit past 9:30 here local time. So obviously, as Ilaria said, it's a little bit late. It's a little bit earlier in the day in New York, and so good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you might be. I think that Ilaria has given a great introduction to the to this webinar. So there's not a whole lot additional that I'd like to say. Probably one additional thing that I'd like to just mention, as Ilaria outlined, is that this is obviously a series of webinars that we're looking to have that focuses on a range of different topics that sit across environmental economic accounts and related applications. The first webinar was also on the Global Biodiversity Framework and its links to ecosystem accounting. This one is focusing more on the implementation and looking at country experiences. And Ilaria has pointed out, you know, we've got a fantastic group of speakers. So I won't hold up the proceedings. I'll pass this over to the chair, who is Mandy Driver. Mandy is an expert in the field of ecosystem accounting, mapping, and classification of ecosystems. And she's also the current chair of the technical committee of the SEA Ecosystem Accounting. She previously worked as Senior Biodiversity Policy Advisor at the South African National Biodiversity Institute for over 15 years, where she played a leading role in developing South Africa's ecosystem accounts. Mandy, you have the floor.
Thanks, Jono. Thanks, Ilaria. Thanks for those great introductions. Yes, so welcome everyone. We're up to 127 participants, which is wonderful, and welcome across time zones. Some people very early, others very late. I'm very fortunate it's 1:30 p.m. In the middle. So yes, I'm based in Cape Town in South Africa, and it really is a pleasure to have all of you here. So we've got a great program, and we'll start with a quick introduction from Marco, and then just to give you the format, we've got 4 country presentations, and we've asked our presenters to keep their presentations to 12 minutes each, and with time for a few minutes of questions. So presenters, if you go over that 12 minutes, I'm afraid there's not going to be time for questions on your presentation in particular. And then we also have some time at the end for a general question and answer round. The format for questions is the Q&A function. So please, we unfortunately, because of the numbers, we're not going to be able to take kind of live questions with hands up, but please put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll take as many of them as we can. And if you're directing your question to a particular person, then please say so. Right, so firstly, I'm going to hand over to Marco Jaworczyk for an introduction. Marco is a statistician in the Environmental Economic Accounts section of the UN Statistics Division, where he works on implementation of the SEA and capacity development projects in various countries.
Mandy? Ilaria, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but yeah, Mandy is frozen.
Probably we just lost Mandy there. So I think she was just introducing me, and that's fine. So I'll just continue with my presentation. Thank you. And I hope she comes back very soon. Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm Marco Jaworczyk from United Nations Statistics Division. And I will just make a quick refresher on the SEA ecosystem accounting here. And especially on the extended services. So just to quickly reiterate that we had this refresher already or had a lengthy presentation on the SEA and the Global Biodiversity Framework in the previous webinar that was on the 15th of April. And the slides and the video are online, so you have the links here. The slides will be shared, but you can also find it easily on our website. I would really encourage you to watch the video on both of these presentations. They're very informative if you have missed that, or if you still need a little bit more refresher. In this webinar, I'll just zoom in directly into the SEA ecosystem accounting and the GBF indicators, and then directly into the extend accounts and the services flow accounts. As I said in previous webinar, we said that many times, many of you might already know this very well. The SEA has 2 parts. It's the central framework on the left and the ecosystem accounting on the right. The central framework deals with individual environmental assets, whereas the ecosystem accounts deals with the ecosystem assets more in a holistic kind of way. Why is that important? Because the Global Biodiversity Framework under the UNCBD has different, its monitoring framework has different indicators, and most of these, several of these indicators are informed through the SIA ecosystem accounting. Namely, the two headline indicators that we mostly talk about is the indicator A2 on the extent of natural ecosystems. That is very much linked to the ecosystem, to the extent account, and the B1 on the services provided by ecosystems. There's a few other ones, and there's also one on domestic public funding and private funding that can be derived from the SIA central framework, as can be seen from this slide. SIA ecosystem accounting has several accounts, has 5 different accounts. On the stock side, we have the ecosystem extent and condition account. So here, as I said, the ecosystem extent is directly linked to the indicator A2 on the extent of natural ecosystems. This indicator can be directly derived from that account. And as the metadata that are being finalized at the moment as we speak, are directly take the SIA as the underpinning methodological basis for this indicator. And then on the flow accounts, we have the ecosystem services flow accounts, which account for the ecosystem service flows. And again here, the SIA ecosystem accounting is the underpinning methodological basis for the indicator B1 on the services from ecosystem. So let me quickly zoom into the ecosystem extend accounts. So what are they, and why are they important? So first, some definitions. So we need to first talk about the ecosystem assets. So ecosystems, and we call them ecosystem assets in the SIA to stay with the accounting terminology. They're basically ecosystems that are continuous spaces of specific ecosystem types. They are characterized by a distinct set of biotic and abiotic components and their interactions within them. They can be classified into different ecosystem types. So, for example, as you look at the map, we look at a certain ecosystem accounting area, which can be a region, a country, a particular area of interest, etc. And there we identify the different ecosystem assets and classify them in types. These types can be different types of forests, wetlands, lakes, rivers, croplands, urban areas, marine areas, etc. In order to classify them into these different types, we need some sort of a topology. So the SIA recommends a reference classification, which is the IUCN Global Ecosystem Topology. This topology has been developed by ecologists and is sort of applied on a global level, and has just recently in March this year been also endorsed by the United Nations Statistical Commission as an international statistical classification and included in the international family of classifications. So what is the IUCN Global Ecosystem Topology? It is a hierarchical topology of different ecosystems. And when we talk about the international classification, we talk about the first 3 layers: the realms, the biomes, and then the most importantly, the ecosystem functional groups. There's about 110 different ecosystem functional groups, and they really try to classify the global ecosystems into 110 different groups, and that really forms the basis for global comparison and a global classification. The classification itself foresees also 3 more layers underneath, but they are really for national implementation and can be quite detailed and varied between the different countries. So what is an ecosystem extend account? So the ecosystem extend account really tracks the area of different ecosystem types within the accounting area, such as the country, into different periods. It's always in physical units, usually hectares, square kilometers, or whatever the unit might be preferred. Starts with an opening extent. So at the beginning of the period, we have an opening extent of a particular ecosystem type and a closing extent. In between, we have obviously the reductions and additions to that ecosystem type. A change matrix, ecosystem type change matrix, is also an important tool because it does not only give us the opening and closing extent and the additions and reductions, but it classifies the additions and the reductions into which ecosystem type the transition is made from. So, for example, we can have a transition from a forest to a crop field, and that's important information because we know how have the ecosystems been transitioned or modified from one to another. So that was a quick introduction on the ecosystem extent account. Let me quickly go through the services flow accounts. And you noticed I don't have any concrete examples here because this webinar is about four countries that will make their examples that will really show us how that works in practice. So this is a bit of a dry theoretical introduction to put everyone on speed. So ecosystem services flow accounts, it's about flows of ecosystem services that are supplied by ecosystem assets and used by economic units in like different types of industries, households, government, etc. during that accounting period. What is important to notice, and I will talk about it later, is the alignment between supply and use has to be matched, or they need to. So an ecosystem service needs to be used for the accounting framework to work in order to be recorded. Ecosystem services flow accounts can be both in physical and monetary terms. Usually we start with physical terms, and then we can value them to put a monetary value on them. So as you can see from the graphic here on the left, ecosystems can provide many different and quite a lot of ecosystem services. But this is an accounting framework, and also to keep it's in line with the system of national accounts, so it can inform economic policy. We really need to match the supply or the potential supply with the demand, with what humanity, economy, and society really needs. And that is, the sort of an actual flow of these ecosystem services and gets recorded in this, what we call a supply table. So a supply table really lists the list of ecosystem services we track and which ecosystem types provide them. And then that gets matched to a use in the use table, where we have the different ecosystem services or the same ecosystem services that are basically recorded as used by different either industries, households, government, etc. So that is basically the ecosystem service flow account. So we need a large, a varied number of ecosystem services that we can track for the ecosystem accounts. The SIA ecosystem accounting provides a list or a reference list of about 25 ecosystem services, and they are grouped into three main groups: into provisioning, such as provision of biomass and so forth, regulating maintenance services, global climate regulation, air filtration, soil erosion, etc., and then cultural services. Those are, let's say, recreation-based, visual amenity, and so on services. Most of the time, for measuring ecosystem services, we need some biophysical modeling tools. Those are quantitative estimation of biological phenomena or processes that are difficult or difficult to observe or very costly to observe. They're very useful to understanding, but they're not the only thing, and they should be complemented with some ground truthing and some collection of data. And we need them because usually ecosystem services or provision of ecosystem services are not captured, or their data sources are not there, or it can be difficult or costly to measure in situ. Or we need to extrapolate because they only have measurements in different areas. There's many modeling techniques that are there in the literature and widely accepted or widely talked about. And there's also many different platforms that have been developed and can help modelers to model ecosystem services. So that's quick overview. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll hand over back to Mandy. If there's any questions, please do not hesitate to put them in the Q&A. I will try to, during the rest of the webinar, I'll try to respond them in writing. I don't think we have time for questions right away because we prefer to go to the actual country presentations. But over to you, Mandy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you for being exactly spot on time to the minute. And yes, please put questions in the chat, and we may be able to come back to some of those questions at the end if we have. Yeah, we've got a fair amount of time at the end. Lots of applause for you. Right, so we're going to move on to our South African presentation, which is going to be given by Thuli Mahlangu, who was a colleague of mine for many years at SANBI while I was there. Thuli is a senior specialist in ecosystem accounting at the South African National Biodiversity Institute, SANBI. She has expertise in earth observation, ecology, and natural capital accounting within South Africa. She specializes in developing ecosystem accounts and related indicators to inform policy and tools, while also building capacity among colleagues. And Thuli collaborates with other entities in contributing to South Africa's natural capital accounting community of practice. Thuli, so I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mandy. Am I audible? Okay, thank you. I'll share my screen. As I'm doing that, I'll introduce myself again, as Mandy has already done that. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Thuli, and I need to find a way to share my screen. Okay. Gremlins. No, that's not what I want.
Yeah, it's starting, Thuli. There you go. We've got it. We're just on.
Really?
Yeah, that your screen shared, but it looked like it was a.
Okay, I'm going to do that again.
Don't panic. Everyone can just take a breath. It's fine. Are you finding the share screen button at the bottom?
Share screen. There it is. And I'll be sharing my screen.
Okay, it's sharing a YouTube channel. There we go. Perfect. That's it. Excellent. You're good to go. Oh, now we're seeing your present. Now we're seeing presenter view. So.
Okay.
You should be able to just put it in
Yeah.
Presentation mode from here.
I did that, just technology, just at the worst of time, it will let me down. How's that, Chair?
It's not in presentation mode. We're just seeing it in ordinary PowerPoint mode. So if you can just put it in presentation mode.
Oh. On my side, it's on presentation mode.
Just
Thuli, do you have two different screens?
No, I only have one screen.
Oh, okay.
It looks like you can just press the usual little presentation icon.
Resume share.
At the bottom.
Can you see my presentation now?
We're seeing the presentation, yeah. So I think you just need to get it into. There we go.
No.
Got it.
Showing now.
Yes, it's perfect now. Okay, so you're good to go.
Is it? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yay. All right. I've already greeted everybody, and as I've already been introduced, I'm the senior specialist in ecosystem accounting in South Africa, in the South African National Biodiversity Institute. My presentation is based on the South African institutional arrangement for natural capital accounts, our foundational data that we use for ecosystem extent accounts, the summary for the methodology and analysis, the summary of results and indicators, as well as lessons learned and challenges. So in South Africa, there are 3 core partners towards our institutional arrangements for ecosystem accounting. Our National Statistical Office, the Stats SA, which leads the overall natural capital accounting efforts and also publishes the natural capital accounting, including the ecosystem accounts, which I'll be presenting on. My organization, SANBI, is a public sector agency that falls under the Ministry of Environment. And our mandate includes monitoring and reporting on the state of ecosystems, which makes us a natural technical partner to Stats SA in compiling ecosystem accounts. And we also curate several of the key spatial data layers that we've used for the accounts. And then the South African Ministry of Environment, and they're involved in our accounts, and they also own some of our spatial data layers that we use for the accounts. A milestone for us in South Africa was the launch of the Stats SA's new Natural Capital series in 2020 with our first set of land and terrestrial ecosystem accounts. We also published our accounts for protected areas in 2021 and accounts for strategic water source areas in 2023. And most recently, which is not shown on the presentation, is our sub-national water resource accounts for 2 sub-national catchments. The land and terrestrial ecosystem accounts were done as part of a natural capital and evaluation of ecosystem services project in South Africa, which was led jointly by Stats SA and SANBI with the support globally from UNSD and UNEP. Our foundational data layers, there are 2 major ones. The National Vegetation Map, this provides us with the natural ecosystem types, as well as the National Land Cover, which provides us with the anthropogenic ecosystems types. And I'll take you more in detail in my next coming slides. And we are fortunate in South Africa to have a national ecosystem classification system, which has been developed over many years. And SANBI is the custodian of the National Ecosystem Classification System and convenes many of the ecosystem scientists who are involved in developing as well as maintaining this classification, as well as the spatial data sets in our country. So this system was adopted by Statistics South Africa as a statistical standard in 2021. And what you can see on the map is the ecosystem types for the 3 primary realms, the terrestrial and the marine at the top, as well as the wetlands and rivers at the bottom, which make up the freshwater realm. In each case, the ecosystem types are mapped as they're mapped based on their historical extent or as close to that as possible. And this is used as a stable baseline for tracking change over time. And you will see in my upcoming slides for the accounts. The National Vegetation Map provides the spatial data on natural ecosystem type. And this is the full historical extent, as you can see on the map, of the different terrestrial ecosystem types. And these then are grouped into 9 biomes for our accounts. This provides us a stable baseline extent against which we assess change, as you will see. We have crosswalked our South African national ecosystem typologies, ecosystem functional groups in South Africa, and not all ecosystem types, what we found that matched perfectly with the global ecosystem type system. But through an expert-led process, we have also agreed on the best possible allocation of our national ecosystem types to the global ecosystem typology. And the vegetation types are equivalent more or less to the global ecosystem typology level 6, which is the most detailed level that you can find. And our national land cover is one of our data sets that we pride ourselves with in South Africa, because we're very fortunate that we have this has been developed, and this has allowed us to have a time series data, and this data is owned by the Ministry of Environment. And at the time when we compiled these accounts in 2020, we only had the data for 1990 and 2014 national land cover time series data sets. And when we update these accounts, we will be in a fortunate position now to have, more data sets, which is the 2018, 2020, and the most recent that will be hot off the press, will be released this coming week, is the National Land Cover 2022. And with highlighting, looking at this table, a few points. Here we have the grouping of the national land cover classes in 4 nested tiers, and the grouping was done to provide us with the anthropogenic ecosystem types. And it was worked out as a team and in consultation with relevant partners. And doing this early on and consultatively saves a lot of time later on. And this is part of our experience. And there are 25 of the 72 classes which fall in the cultivated classes. And as you can see also here with the build-up, there are 36 of the detailed build-up classes that fall in that ecosystem type. This is what this looks like on the map, what I've just explained in my previous slide. And the cultivated class makes up 13% of South African landmass, and build-up makes up 3% of our land area. Here are just some photographs of how these ecosystem types look like in South African context, our commercial croplands, our mining areas, our timber and plantations and settlements. And surely these will vary from country to country. And just a brief summary of our methodology and analysis. To produce the accounts, these data sets that I've already mentioned, we intersected them with our National Basic Spatial Unit layer, which is a grid of 1 hectare. It's 100 by 100 meter cells, which provides us with a consistent spatial framework for integrating data on ecosystems as well as demographic and economic data. We use these 3 softwares, which is the Environmental Systems Modeling Platform, Excel, as well as ArcGIS. And currently, Ensom is now being called the Data for Nature, and it is a commercialized software versus when we started using it. In South Africa, we have also been exploring ArcGIS Pro and R programming language using internal SANBI internal capacity towards an automated data workflow for pre-processing as well as compiling ecosystem accounts. And this opens new opportunities to capture our sources and methods as we work, as well as improve our turnaround time in compiling accounts. And just to take you through the summary of our results as well as our indicators, here we have an extent account table for our terrestrial ecosystem types summarized by biome. As I've already mentioned, we have 9 biomes. And I know that the values are too small on the table, but I would like you just to focus on a few highlights that I'm going to draw you to. One is about our 2 accounting periods, which is the 1990 as well as the 2014. And our natural biomes are based on the delineation in the National Vegetation Map, where intensively modified biomes are listed next to the derived that listed, and they're derived from our national land cover. And the historical extent, which is on the first row below the biome, this is the baseline extent that remains constant across time. When we compile the terrestrial ecosystem extent account, we looked, pardon for that, when we compile the ecosystem extent account, we looked at where the anthropogenic ecosystem types have been replaced by the natural ecosystem. We did this by clipping out our anthropogenic types, which come from our national land cover, out, and we overlaid those with our historic extent of our natural ecosystem types. some tongue twisting there. And we can also visualize the information that I've also mentioned from the accounting table in as maps. We can see on the right hand where the anthropogenic ecosystem types, our intensive land use biome, have been replaced, have replaced the natural ecosystem types. So I'm talking about these where they've replaced some of these. And on the graph, then you can also comparing the two graphs on the map. I'll just draw you to just the grassland, our grassland ecosystem type, where it used to make up 27% historically, and where we were sitting in 2014, we're sitting at 18%. And this provides, this ecosystem type provides a livable area for South Africa, and it is an important area for water supply. Next, we can also visualize the information from the accounting tables in order for us to be able to draw findings and also look at indicators. So the indicator for highlight in this slide is the ecosystem extent index, which tracks the percentage change in extent of each ecosystem type relative to our historical extent. It highlights ecosystem types where there has been a large reduction in extent that may impact on their functioning. You can see here that the grassland biome is at 2/3 of its historical extent. And another indicator, the net change in area covered by specific ecosystem types. This can be expressed in absolute or percentage types, and just some few examples, things like our center pivot, irrigated cultivation, where it has increased by 220% between 1990 and 2014, with large ecological impacts, including on water and the area of informal settlements, which has also almost doubled. And from 13,000 hectares to 60,000 hectares, this having a significant challenge for urban, significant challenge for urban planning and service provision. And just a summary of key indicators from our ecosystem extent accounts, we have the proportion of accounting area, and this is covered by a specific ecosystem type, our net change in area covered by specific ecosystem type. This is also presented as absolute and percentage of area unchanged for specific ecosystem types, the percentage of spatial turnover in specific ecosystem types. And lastly is the ecosystem extent index for ecosystem types. And just few points around lessons and challenges. Looking at time, I'll just like point out on the fact that frequently be able to update your accounts. In our experience, the limiting factor was capacity rather than data. And compiling accounts is not simply only about technical endeavor, and producing accounts is also an institutional process with a social process. Inclusive stakeholder involvement and making sure the right people are in the room is very important. And shared learning and patience also ensure sustainability of compiling accounts. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And we have got a couple of minutes. I don't see any questions specifically for you in the chat. There is a more general question, which I think we'll save until our general Q&A session. Anyone wanting to ask a specific question? Lots of applause for you to... all right, let's wait, here's a question from Andrew. What is the size of the team that works on these accounts, Thuli?
Currently we have a technical team of 3 people. It's myself and 1 research assistant and 1 intern, and our project manager. So I could say 5. And in addition to that, we have been also drawing a lot of support from SANBI's other technical team members who are not necessarily sitting within our team to actually help us in working on this.
Great, thanks, Tuli. Now the questions are coming in. So
Okay.
let's do one or two more before we move on to India's presentation. So a question, right? So these are questions that are, gosh, I'm just trying to get a sense of all of them. So question first from Valerie about why was the historical ecosystem index set to 100%? And then I think let's come back to the others later. So yeah, I just want to chat about the 100% as the historical extent.
Should I take that question?
If you can, and then yeah, and then I think you can, and then you can read and digest some of the others while we move on to the other presentations.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it since I'm not sure who else from my team is here. Is because firstly, we're talking about our baseline, meaning that is where we are assuming we are looking at our most pristine. We have the pristine landscape, or as pristine as we can ever be in our landscape. So we're starting from that perspective and working almost like forward from where we historically would have been sitting at 100%, and looking at then with genic activities, how then what our ecosystems, how they've been impacted, or what we're losing as with time in looking at our anthropogenic ecosystem types.
Great, thanks, Tuli. So have a look at some of the other questions, and you can also type answers to them as we go if you'd like to, and we might be able to get back to some of them later. Great, thank you, Tuli, and thanks to those interesting questions that are coming up. So we're now going to move on to hearing about India's ecosystem accounts, and we have Sudipta Ghosh with us. Sudipta is an officer of the Indian Statistical Service and currently holds the post of Director in the Social Statistics Division of the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. In this capacity, she's responsible for the compilation of environmental accounts for India following the SIA framework, and she's actively involved in work related to the implementation of SIA in India, among other responsibilities. Sudipta, can we hand over to you?
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
We can hear you, yes. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
Great. So
okay.
It's not yet in presentation mode. You can just put it in presentation mode.
In my side, it is in presentation mode.
I wonder if it's maybe, I think Tuli had the same thing. Maybe it's just, there's a delay.
Let me try once again. Is it visible now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Right.
Thank you so much.
Over to you.
Yeah, hello. I am Sudipta Ghosh, working in NSO India and looking after the work of the environment accounts in my country. I'm thankful to UNCIA for giving me this opportunity to present some of the India's experiences here with the August gathering today. So these are some of the contents of my presentation. I'll be talking about the history of environment accounts in India, followed by the progress made by India so far, then coming to ecosystem extent and a brief about the ecosystem services, and lastly about the challenges and way forwards. So let me give a brief idea about the history of environment accounts in India, how it started. First of all, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has been mandated by Government of India as per allocation of business rules to develop environment statistics, development of methodology, concepts, and preparation of national resource accounts in India. Now, the concept of environment accounts is not new. We had different studies during the 1997 to 2009, which was conducted under the aegis of Technical Working Group on Natural Resource Accounting. But these studies were, disparate in nature and could not be concretized into a full set of accounts. So, a strategy was required. So, in 2011, in order to help the official system to come up with a concrete method for the compilation of environment accounts in India, an expert group was constituted under Professor Sir Parthadas Gupta for preparing the roadmap for compilation of environment accounts in India. So this group released the report titled Green National Accounts in India Framework and recommended compilation of the SIA accounts in phased manner. So this was the genesis how the environment accounts started in India. Then, as you'll all agree that the compilation of SIA compliant accounts entails rich data sets, and so we require the support and help from other stakeholder ministries. So we constituted an interministerial group which in 2016 to provide both technical as well as data support. Also in 2017, the project NCAVES, that is Natural Capital Accounting and Valuation of Ecosystem Services, was launched. And India was one of the countries to be piloted along with China, Mexico, Brazil, and South Africa. And this project was funded by EU and jointly implemented by UNSD, UNEP in collaboration with CBD. So under the ambit of NCAVES project, several new accounts were developed and also a report detailing the various work done by India has also been compiled in this report titled Ecosystem Accounts for India. In India, the project was implemented by NSO MOSPI in close collaboration with other ministries such as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, National Remote Sensing Center, Soil and Land Use Survey of India, and Indian Institute of Science. Till date, we have compiled these many accounts, or rather estimates. Some of the extent accounts are of land, change matrix of land use, land cover, wetland, forest. For condition accounts, I won't say, it's condition parameters. So some of the soil nutrient index, water quality index, condition for forest, condition for croplands, and condition for wetlands. For services, we have compiled till date crop provisioning services, timber and non-timber forest products provisioning services, fish provisioning services, carbon retention services by forest, soil erosion prevention services, and nature-based tourism services. For the thematic part, we have biodiversity, species richness index of IUCN red list species, extent of protected areas. For the individual accounts, we have the growing stock of timber and carbon, then minerals, energy, solid waste accounts for selected states of India, and material flow accounts, the core ones. These are the 6 publications we have released till date starting from 2018, following the SIA framework. Now coming to the extent accounts, as Marco has already mentioned, that this is like the first starting point for any ecosystem accounts, and this gives the size of an ecosystem asset and mostly measured in spatial area. This provides a very useful information on composition of and changes in ecosystem types within an area, and it demonstrates in an accessible and readily interpreted way and supports derivation of coherent indicators. Now, we have till date developed land extent accounts, and for better interpretation, a change matrix of land use and land cover has also been compiled. The next accounts for land use, land cover, also derived accounts from this change matrix. Then we have the land degradation and wasteland extent accounts from for the wasteland, we have the Wasteland Atlas, which is released by National Remote Sensing Center. And similarly, for land degradation, we had the change matrix provided by NRSC, National Remote Sensing Center. For the wetland extent accounts, we have used the information from Ministry of Environment using National Wetland Atlas, and they have also released Wetland Decadal Change Atlas, so that helped us in tracing the changes between these mid-years. Then also we have the extent for Ramsar sites. Ramsar Convention is an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable utilization of wetlands, recognizing the fundamental ecological functions of the wetland and their economic, cultural, scientific and recreational values. So till date, we have 80 Ramsar sites as on 2024. Then we have also compiled the forest extent accounts using information from India State of Forest Report, which is released by Forest Survey of India. So these are some of the examples, as I mentioned, about the change matrix of land use, land cover. So this provides a very useful information because we know exactly how the different categories of land use, land cover have changed over a period of 5-6 to 11-12. Like, for example, we can say that around 28.97 thousand square kilometers of area of farmland have shifted from shifted into fallow land from farmland in between the periods 2005-6 to 11-12. So exactly you know where the additions or deletions are happening, and which is a very useful indicator for policymakers. Then for the forest extent accounts, we have taken information from India State of Forest Report. As per FSI, that is Forest Survey of India, we have taken the definition of FSI for forest. It includes all lands having trees more than 1 hectare in area and tree canopy density of more than 10%, irrespective of ownership, legal status of land, and species composition of trees. So they have categorized the forest into 5 major categories: very dense forest, moderately dense forest, open forest, scrub, and non-forest. So this information we get once in 2 years. This is a regular report, and with the help of that information, we are able to compile the forest extent accounts. Now coming to the services part, as we all know that ecosystem services is the contribution of the ecosystems to benefits used in economic and other human activities. Now, as per SIA, which classifies the services into 3 parts, the first one is the provisioning services, which are those services which represent the material contribution to benefits by ecosystems. Now, for the provisioning services, till date we have compiled 3 provisioning services. First one is the crop provisioning services, using information from Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So we have used the rental price method, which is prescribed in SIA, and this Ministry of Agriculture provides the rent value or the leased value for crops in each state and in each districts. And using that, we have compiled district-wise estimates of crop provisioning services. For timber and non-timber provisioning services, we have used the data from national accounts as well as from World Bank database. World Bank database provides us with a rent to GDP ratio, and using that information, we have try to estimate the timber and non-timber provisioning services. We are also exploring the feasibility of having a more updated information on forest rent in consultation with the Forest Survey of India. Now, the third one is the fish provisioning services, which is essentially the services provided by the water bodies for the production of the fishes. Now, this estimates as limited to inland water bodies and to tanks, ponds, lakes, reservoirs that are provided for lease and or rent. But this estimates has not been compiled on a pan-India basis. Rather, it has been compiled for 6 states as of now. For the regulating services, these are those services which result from the ecosystem's ability to regulate and maintain climate, hydrological and biochemical cycles, and various biological processes in range that benefit individuals and society. So, 2 services we have compiled till date. First is the soil erosion prevention services by Croplands. So we have used the Russell model, that is revised universal soil loss equation. And using this model, we have taken 2 scenarios, one with cropland and another in a barren land, and then tried to compute the soil loss in these 2 scenarios. And the difference between these two soil losses is actually the estimate of soil erosion, which has been prevented by the cropland. So this is a kind of service provided by the cropland. Similar exercise we have tried to do for the forest also, that is how much soil is being prevented by the forest, but that again has not been compiled on an all India basis. Rather, we have piloted it for 2 districts of India. Then another one is the carbon retention service, which has been compiled using the stock of carbon, which is provided by again Forest Survey of India. So we have converted this carbon into carbon dioxide equivalent using IPCC conventions, and then we have used the social cost of carbon approach, and then arrived at a monetary value of the carbon retention services provided by the forest. For the cultural services, which include symbolic benefits through recreation, knowledge development, relaxation, and spiritual reflection, we have attempted just one service, which is the nature-based tourism services. So this is basically done with the help of administrative data from Ministry of Tourism and survey data for the consumer, that is for the expenditure part. So we have taken tourists with holidaying or leisure and recreation, and also pilgrimage and religion purpose were considered, because in India mostly the pilgrimages or the holy places are located in good scenic places where the nature provides services also. So these categories of tourists have been considered. And then average expenditure incurred per person, this has been taken from the survey results. Now, coming to the challenges and way forward, the challenges are, yes, the data gaps and the lack of timeliness in receiving data. It is because different agencies have different purpose and different priorities for collecting the data. So often our purpose doesn't get highlighted. And then informations are constrained in silos. So we have realized that each and every agency has a lot of data available with them, but working in silos prevents their effective usage, and that is why mutual cooperation is necessary. There is a need for capacity building because this CR and environmental accounting is a new area. Not much people are aware of the same. So we after the NCAVES project, we had released the strategy for environmental economic accounting, which to provide a roadmap for the development of environmental economic account in India. the main idea was to, target our own self for the next 5 years, the accounts which we are going to or intend to do. So two major accounts which we are working on is the ocean ecosystem accounting and thematic accounts for biodiversity in urban areas. So we are trying to explore the data availability and other framework, etc., in these areas as well. And we constantly endeavor towards expanding the scope and coverage of the accounts. Now, as far as lesson learned is concerned, there's a lot of need for awareness and also need for data integration, because different agencies have different data, and there's a need to integrate this data to arrive at a meaningful conclusion. So some of the steps that we have taken for awareness is we have this ENVI-STATS India frequently asked questions and ENVI-STATS India glossary, which we release every year, different versions. Each time a new account is released, we try and update our FAQs and glossary for the ease of the users. And then because India has a federal setup, so subnational level, we have the states who have a completely independent functionaries. So we have initiated the capacity development workshop at the subnational level. So 4 workshops we have done till date. So the plan is to expand these workshops to more and more states and to have one-to-one discussions and dialogues with individual states. And then frequent interactions with other agencies by means of seminar, webinars, or meetings to let our information flow through them, and we get to know their technicalities and other related issues. So thank you. That was all from my side.
Thanks, Sudipta. Thanks very much. You managed to take us through a very large range of content very efficiently and effectively. Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions, and you're also getting lots of applause. And a question for you is from Hugh Lee. Would like some more information on the use of social cost of carbon for estimating the monetary value of ecosystem services, in particular regulating services. Are you able to tell us more about that?
Yeah, we refer to the paper, Ricky et al. Paper, and that was that gave the social cost of carbon for the year 2017. And then for the subsequent years, we have used deflators, GDP deflators, to bring it to a more current year. So yeah, and we are exploring with other agencies within the country if they could arrive at a state-wise social cost of carbon, because that will give a more refined results. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. I am not seeing other questions for you at the moment, and I wonder, I think probably people just need a little bit of time to think and digest. So I think what we might do is move on to our next presentation from Ireland, and then I'm sure there will be other questions for you that come up in the chat. The questions that we're getting verbal answers to, is it possible for us to leave them in the open section in case our presenters want to also provide answers in writing? So yeah, okay. And also just to let people know that you'll see there that in the Q&A panel, there are 3 tabs: open, answered, and dismissed. And the answered tab looks like it's grayed out, but you can switch to the answered tab, and then you can see the answers that have been given to all of those questions. I don't think there's the possibility. Oh no, it looks like you can you may be able to add more to an answered question if you'd like to. Right. So okay, so I think let's move on. This is also new for me, by the way, the navigating the Q&A function and chairing at the same time. So I'm finding it not completely straightforward. But thank you, Sudipta. And now we are going to move on to
thank you so much.
Nova Sharkey, who is a statistician at the Central Statistics Office in Ireland, and with an academic background in environmental science and ecology. She's been working in the CSO since 2015, and her work has been focused on ecosystem accounting since the Ecosystem Accounts Division in the CSO was created in 2020, so just 4 years ago. Nova, thank you so much, and I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Thanks, Mandy. Let me just share my screen here now.
Great, we're seeing the screen, not yet in presentation mode, but it seems like that might just take a little while to kick in. Not yet. Nova, have you put it into presentation mode on your side?
Not yet. Let me just do it now.
All right, there we go. So I'm sure Tuli will be relieved that she wasn't the only person having this issue. Okay, we're still just seeing it in...
No, I'll just stop and reshare. I think that worked for the last presenter.
Yeah.
Let me just try.
Gives everyone a moment to think, so it's actually to have a minute or so break.
No.
There we go. Right. Oh, now we're seeing it in presenter view with your notes.
Okay, I've switched there.
There we go. Fantastic.
Okay, excellent. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Chair, for the introduction, and thank you to the organisers for the opportunity to present here today. I'm just going to give you a brief presentation on how we've worked towards developing ecosystem services accounts in the CSO. So here's the outline for my presentation today. I'll give a quick introduction to the Ecosystem Accounts Division and our goals as a division. Then I'll introduce how we work, followed by a short overview of our outputs so far. Then I'll outline our next steps as we continue to develop the accounts, and then follow that with some take-home messages based on our experience in Ireland. So first, what are we trying to achieve in the CSO when it comes to ecosystem accounts? As a division, we have two main goals. The first is to meet national needs for ecosystem accounts, and the second is to meet Eurostat reporting requirements. Eurostat is the European Union Statistical Agency. As we were building our accounts, we were ensuring that all of our work is bringing us closer to these goals. And so the Eurostat reporting requirements are shaping the way that we're approaching the accounts. Since we're the only country presenting today that will have to report based on these requirements, I thought I'd spend a bit of time introducing the regulation and what it means for us. So as part of the EU's implementation of the system of environmental and economic accounts, a new module on ecosystem accounts has been introduced by Eurostat. This is an amendment to Regulation 691/2011 on environmental economic accounts. The new Ecosystem Accounts module has a range of current and future applications. These new statistics give recognition to the benefits to society that are produced by nature in coherence with macroeconomic statistics. There are links with the Nature Restoration Law, the Global Biodiversity Monitoring Framework, and climate change policies. Final approval is expected in September of this year, which would mean mandatory reporting commences in 2026 with the first reference year of 2024. Reporting will include extent, condition, and services accounts. So for the extent accounts, reporting will be on a 3-yearly basis and include extent accounts with opening and closing areas for each ecosystem type, as well as a conversion matrix. Mandatory reporting will be at level 1 of the EU ecosystem typology that you can see here, and member states will be able to report at the more detailed level 2 on a voluntary basis. The condition accounts will also be reported on a 3-yearly basis. You can see that not all ecosystem types are included here, but there are condition variables to be reported for settlements and other artificial areas, croplands, grasslands, forests and woodlands, and coastal beaches, dunes and wetlands. For the services accounts, we will be reporting at least one service under each of the provisioning, regulating and maintenance, and cultural services headings. For provisioning services, we'll be reporting wood provision in net increment in 1,000 cubic meters. Crop provision will be reported as tons of crops, and the pollination service will be reported as tons of pollinator-dependent crops that can be attributed to wild pollinators by type of crop. For the regulating and maintenance services, we'll be reporting on air filtration and tons of particulate matter adsorbed, global climate regulation and tons of net sequestration of carbon and tons of organic carbon stored, including above and below ground, and local climate regulation, which will be reported as the reduction of temperature in cities due to the effect of urban vegetation. For the cultural services, we'll be reporting on nature-based tourism, which will be reported as the number of overnight stays in hotels, hostels, camping grounds, etc., that can be attributed to visits to ecosystems. Ireland is a member of the Eurostat Task Force on Ecosystem Accounting, a group set up to develop the methodologies necessary for countries to compile the statistics required by the regulation. The task force has produced guidance notes for the extent accounts, condition accounts, and each of the mandatory services. And you can see here that they're all at different levels of maturity. We're due to begin testing of the guidance notes on pollination, air filtration, and local climate regulation later on this month. Now I'll tell you a little bit about how we work. Ecosystem accounts are highly reliant on collaboration and engagement with experts. This is a common theme that we've seen already spoken about by the previous presenters. The accounts use data from a very wide range of sources and fields, and in many cases, subject matter knowledge and expertise is required. Because of this, it's very important to build networks and organizations with experts at all levels, inside the organization, nationally and internationally. Starting with the CSO itself, we've worked to raise awareness and highlight areas for collaboration with colleagues in other divisions, including those responsible for reporting on the CS Central Framework, as well as agriculture, methodology, data science, and of course, national accounts. There's a huge need for GIS skills in ecosystem accounts, as well as other areas within the office, and the CSOs recruited GIS specialists in the methodology division who can provide guidance to us. We've also founded a GIS community of practice, which brings together GIS users across the civil and public service to share knowledge and experience in the area. As well as that, we're developing capabilities across the office in the use of OR, and the OR user network in the CSO is a great resource for sharing code and learning from others. At a national level then, we've also worked hard to engage with stakeholders. Last year, we held our first and hopefully annual stakeholder forum. The idea was to raise awareness around ecosystem accounting and our work to all of the potential users, data owners, and policymakers. We had presentations from the CSO and national and international guest speakers, and we also held a workshop to explore data sources and user requirements. We're currently organising our second stakeholder forum, which is planned for September of this year. At the stakeholder forum, we flagged to attendees the importance of having input and feedback from experts when developing the accounts. And we let them know that we'd be in touch in relation to developing expert groups as we work towards testing the guidance notes and compiling statistics. We've been very lucky and have found that our experts have been very generous with their time, and we've formed a number of expert groups that provided feedback and guidance on the publications and testing of guidance notes, with further groups planned for later this year. We've been active in national groups as well, participating in the National Land Use Review, the National Biodiversity Action Plan Working Group, and among various others. We have various formal liaison groups, such as between the CSO and the Environmental Protection Agency, and an Agricultural Statistics Liaison Group. And we've met with a range of other organisations, only some of whom are mentioned here. The CSO has specific actions around ecosystem accounts in Ireland's 4th National Biodiversity Action Plan, which will feed into global biodiversity framework monitoring. One exciting area of collaboration is a co-supervised PhD project focused on developing marine ecosystem accounts. This project is a new type of working for the CSO, who is a co-supervisor along with the Marine Institute and the University of Galway. In relation to international engagement, I've already mentioned our participation in the Eurostat Task Force on Ecosystem Accounting. We've also hosted a study visit from Slovenia, which was a very useful opportunity to share experiences with other compilers of ecosystem accounts. The European Statistical Training Programme provides a range of training courses, including one on ecosystem accounts. This was a great course and a great way to meet other statisticians working in the area. And we're also engaged in other international groups, including SIA implementation meetings, as well as participation in the London group. This slide outlines just some of the data sources that we've used to date. So for the extent accounts, we've used Careen and national data sets, and we'll shortly be exploring our new national land cover map as well. We have some great national data that will also feed into the accounts, like the greenhouse gas inventory and the national forest inventory. And we are beginning to use Earth observation data, such as data from the CLMS on tree cover density for forest and woodlands condition. We're also in the process of developing a survey to capture data for the nature-based tourism service. For the next part of the presentation, I'll give a quick overview of the outputs we've produced to date. You can find our publications on the CSO website under ecosystem accounts. And I'll just note here that any of the publications we've produced so far have all been under the Frontier Series banner. This indicates to users that we are using new methods which are under development and or data sources which may be incomplete. By publishing outputs as part of the Frontier Series, we can provide useful new information to users, get feedback on the methods, while highlighting that these are not yet of the standard required for official statistics. Now, I'm going to give you two examples of the work we've been doing to date. In October last year, we produced our first national extent accounts based on the guidance note being developed by the Eurostat task force. The extent accounts are the basis of all of the other accounts. We used Careen land cover accounting layers to produce them, and they provide a good insight into the changes in ecosystem extent across the time series. The publication includes maps of extent for the opening and closing periods, as well as a conversion matrix and a Sankey diagram showing the changes. Our Forests and Woodlands publication in March of this year was the first publication to explore ecosystem services. We reported on the Wood Provision Service and the Global Climate Regulation Service. The Wood Provision Service is defined in the regulation as the ecosystem contributions to the growth of trees and other woody biomass. This is to be reported as the net annual increment of timber, defined as the net average annual growth of live trees. For ecosystem accounting and for economic accounting, a distinction is made between forests available for wood supply, or FAWS, and forests not available for wood supply. The net annual increment for forests available for wood supply is considered the Wood Provision Ecosystem Service, as this is the increase in wood available to be harvested from managed forests. In an ecosystem accounting context, supply and use tables are accounting tables structured to record flows of final ecosystem services between economic units and ecosystems, and flows of intermediate services among ecosystems. Supply and use tables will link ecosystem accounts to the System of National Accounts framework. For the Wood Provision Service, all of the use is allocated to intermediate consumption by industry, as the forestry industry is the first user in the supply chain, using this increment of forest trees as additions to inventories. The Global Climate Regulation Service is defined in the Ecosystem Accounts module as the ecosystem contributions to reducing concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere through the removal or net sequestration of carbon from the atmosphere and the retention or storage of carbon in ecosystems. This is reported as tons of net sequestration of carbon and tons of organic carbon stored in terrestrial ecosystems. For the use of the Global Climate Regulation Service, the CAES states that the service is collectively consumed by governments on behalf of society, and so the use of this service is allocated entirely to government final consumption. Data from the National Forest Inventory was provided by the Forest Service, which is part of our Agricultural Ministry, for the net annual increment and for data on carbon storage. The National Inventory Report, the Greenhouse Gas Inventory tables, were used to compile figures for net carbon sequestration and carbon stored in harvested wood products. Okay, and then next we'll move on to the next steps for the CSO. So we have some more outputs coming with a publication on grasslands and croplands due out next week. This will include data on the Crop Provision Service for 2000 to 2022. And we'll be busy this summer testing the guidance notes for air filtration, local climate regulation, and pollination. Further development of the ecosystem extent accounts is planned. Using national and other data sources, we'll refine the extent accounts and produce them at level 2 of the EU ecosystem typology. We'll also be participating in the voluntary data collection for Eurostat for the guidance notes that we've tested previously. And just to note, while the regulation doesn't include any monetary accounts, this is an area that we're keen to explore and plan to do some work on this towards the end of the year, pending resource availability. Eurostat will also be carrying out a feasibility study on the inclusion of monetary accounts in the regulation in the future. And then just to sum up, I have some take-home messages. So we've found that engagement and collaboration is really key in compiling these accounts. It's very difficult for any one person to have all of the expertise required. So it's really important to develop networks within your organisation with national experts and, where possible, internationally. We found that people in the ecosystem accounts community are really keen to share experience and knowledge, so reaching out to others has been relatively easy and very useful. Upskilling is also very important here. We actually found the SIA Ecosystem Accounting e-learning course was really useful, and it's a great starting point for any new joiners to the team. We've also found that communities of practice to share knowledge in technical areas have been very valuable. And then finally, as an NSI, it can be difficult to publish statistics that are under development. Having our Frontier series of publications on the website has been a really great way for us to publish what we're working on, while noting that they're not yet official statistics. And all it remains for me to say is thank you, Gurv Mahagat. And if you have any queries at all, please don't hesitate to contact us on the email address there. Thank you.
Thanks, Nova. That was great and really useful, I think, for you to give us the European context. So I'm glad we were able to bring that in. Thanks. So let's just see. We do have a couple of questions for you. One of them is, just on here, is there a baseline year set by Eurostat for data collection or data for reporting the accounts?
Yeah, so the first year that we'll report extent accounts will be 2024, and then it'll be built on from there. So I don't think they're looking at retrospective reporting.
Okay, so the baseline will be from the beginning of the effectiveness of the regulations.
Yeah.
And then also another question for you, how related to Europe, how far has Eurostat got with marine ecosystem services, and do you report on any of these units? I'm not exactly sure of the meaning there, but yeah, do you know anything about Eurostat and marine accounts?
I don't know in particular. In relation to the ecosystem accounts, we have to report on extent, but at the moment there are no other reporting requirements for the marine ecosystems.
Okay, good. Useful to know. Right, I'm not seeing other questions for you, and we are actually a couple of minutes ahead of time. I'm sure people will think of questions for you. Here is another one that's come in. When you begin to compile your marine accounts, will you utilize the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership Framework, or is there a specific marine guideline within SIA?
No, this is slightly outside my area of expertise. My colleague is actually the one who's focused on marine accounts. So I'm not too sure. I think, yeah, if you'd like to contact us directly, Sarah, we can answer that offline. I'm not sure at the moment. Apologies.
And maybe I could just say, in fact, Jono, who's with us, who is actually an expert in marine accounts, but my understanding is that the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership draws on the SIA framework, so they're very much interrelated. Okay, so no other questions. Thank you again, Nova. And I think let us move on to Gemma. So Gemma Thomas is a statistician at the UK's Office of National Statistics, the ONS. With 20 years experience in official statistics, Gemma has worked on ONS's environmental statistics since 2017. Her work has included overseeing the UK's environmental accounts and the development of an agreed definition and initial estimate of green jobs. Earlier this year, Gemma took up the role of head of natural capital accounts. Right, so Gemma, I'm going to hand straight over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's have a go. See if I've tried presenting before I share, so let's see if that works.
Oh yeah, let's see if you also have the same.
Is that working? Yeah,
that has worked.
That's the bonus of going last, that is. Although, thank you very much for that, Mandy. And as it said in the introduction, I took over this role a few months ago, so I'm relatively new to this world. But luckily, colleagues on the line are going to help me with questions if there's anything too sticky. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a history of the accounts in the UK, and as an overview of what we do, I'm going to look a little bit into 2 ecosystem services accounts and then touch on some of the uses. So before I start, I always think it's useful to give an overview of the statistical system within the UK. So the Office Office for National Statistics is the UK's National Statistics Office, and we are independent of government, but we also have statisticians as part of the statistical system embedded all across ministries. So it's quite dispersed in that way. And the reason that is important is it's particularly true for environment. Environment is a devolved policy area within the United Kingdom, and so the four nations, England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, all have their own policy objectives under, environment, and also consequently their own statistics and data. And so, as this next chart shows, there are a lot of agencies in the space at different levels of geography and for different topics, and all involved in it. So it's quite a challenging space in terms of stakeholders, and there's lots going on. So moving on now to developing our ecosystem accounts. We call the ecosystem accounts natural capital accounts in the United Kingdom, and we have a long history really, dating back to when then Prime Minister David Cameron sort of set out what is effectively the Beyond GDP agenda, saying that measuring economic progress alone is not enough, and we need to look at the quality of life. Quickly on from that, there was a government white paper which actually said we will put natural capital at the heart of government accounting, and we will work with the Office for National Statistics to fully include natural capital accounts in the UK. So we have a strong basis for the work that we are doing. And then following on, a few years ago, there was a Dasgupta review, which said also about looking at environment and accounting for damage to biodiversity in our national accounts. So since then, we've been very busy. So I've just put a few things on the slides to show that we've done regular sort of releases. They can be in the form of bulletins. We've done sort of articles with our data journalists. We've got development projects that have gone on, lots and lots. So some of the main key developments, and probably the main one to say, is that we now regularly produce monetary accounts for 16 different ecosystems in the United Kingdom. So we have an annual publication that produces these every year. We've also managed to produce some subnational accounts, which I'll talk a bit about in a minute. We have included our natural capital accounts in the UK's National Accounts Blue Book. We've done a separate peatland account and restoration cost accounts. We have actually developed some supply and use tables. And earlier this year, we published some initial estimates of depletion. And one of the other key things to note is because we have this sort of rich history of producing data, we have actually been able to produce ad hoc pieces of work to support policy that use all the skills developed, such as some work that was done during the pandemic. Before I talk about ecosystem services, I wanted to just talk about our habitats in the UK. So I believe we are slightly different. We use the UK's National Ecosystem Assessment that sets out 7 broad terrestrial habitats, and then along with marine. So we have 8 broad habitats. These can map to the more detailed, 21 of the categories of the more detailed IUCN. But this is the way that we approach it. So on the right, you can see here that we showed, that was published in our main annual account, the extent across those 8 broad habitats and how that has changed between 1990 and 2021. But it's important to note that actually, as well as these annual ecosystem accounts, we twice a year we aim to update one of our, or 2 of our habitat accounts. And like most recently, in fact, last week, we published a woodlands account, and here's some charts on the left from that. So that is on the condition indicators, which we do follow the 6 condition types in the SEER. We've also produced back in 2022 a sort of a UK extent and condition sort of large article that really set out what data we have, what we don't for all of the accounts. And I think our users found that particularly useful because we were able to identify where there are gaps in the data. So going back to ecosystem services then, following on from that 2011 white paper, we published sort of a first ecosystem accounts in 2014 for 7 different ecosystem services at UK level. Jump forward to 2023, and we have 16 ecosystem services. So 9 provisioning services, 4 regulating and 3 cultural. We're using the net present value, but for some of our services, we have some more advanced modelling, and I'm going to talk about that a bit, and valuation techniques for some of them. And also last year, for the first time, we were able to break down the ecosystem services for the 4 UK nations, and also by habitat. And then because we have been producing for a while, we're also able to show the percentage change in asset value over time. So we're able to look at change over time. Okay, so that doesn't mean we haven't faced any challenges or we don't face challenges. We continually do. There's still lots of them. So data being one of the key ones. So not just in terms of data availability, but also just data management and data handling. I think at last count, we used 275 different data sources from 67 different providers in the compilation of our accounts. And that is a challenge in itself, just keeping across all of those data and managing the relationships with the suppliers. That is a large task in itself. We have the question about when are we done? So this is around, in the UK, these are known as developing official statistics in development. Forgive me, the name has just changed from experimental and I still trip up on that. So essentially they are official statistics in development, and that gives us the freedom to develop methods and work closely with users and incorporate feedback. But we know that if we want our data to be used in decision making, we really need it to be in a steady state where users can feel confident that there's not going to be big changes every year. So we're currently doing an assessment of those different, the ecosystem services that we do, and where are we with them? How confident are we that those methods are the best that they can be, and where are the ones that maybe need a lot more development? I've put on engagement and communication with users here, just because I think for anyone who produces any form of statistics, this is a key challenge and something that needs to be addressed. So we do a lot of work to engage with users, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in a bit. But I just wanted to pop it on there because we're always looking for the best way to have impact, and we are open to feedback and ideas. Okay, so just a little look now at in slightly more depth at 2 of our ecosystem services. I think, as I've caveated, I'm not the expert on these, but I'm just going to give you a slight overview. So the key thing with fish then, so this is we look at the value of fish capture in wild fish populations, and we used to do this at industry level, but actually one of the key developments we have recently is we're able to do it by at species level and at year level. We have all the data available to do that. So that has been a real sort of step forward. And the other thing that we are able to do is we can vary the length. So we use sustainable discounted over, we split the fish into sustainable and unsustainable, forgive me, the species, and then we discount over 100 years for sustainable and over 25 years for those that are marked as unsustainable or unknown. I believe in 2021, we knew about just over 70% of the status of the fish. But what this means that is we can really reflect changes in the asset value if the fish changes category. And that actually happened between 2019 and 2020, where I believe it was mackerel became badged as unsustainable. And then that is able to feed through into our asset estimates. And it's reflected in that. And then just briefly, we also estimate the value of nature on health. And this is our biggest service, actually. It's our largest asset, sorry. And this is just a snapshot from an article that we did with our data journalists from our last review. So we estimate the health benefits of nature. A lot of this is based on other academic research by others that found that more than 120 minutes a week in nature resulted in higher self-reported general health. And that's the basis of our work. And then we produce a model that essentially controls for other variables, but predicts that gives probabilities of landing in different health levels, depending on whether you spend 120 minutes in nature a week or if you don't. And we're able to then estimate the value of that using quality adjusted life years based on NHS avoided health costs. So it just shows you an example here. We have sort of in 2020, it peaked, the number of visits peaked and time spent peaked, and so did people gaining health benefits. But since then, people have been spending, they're not visiting for long enough, essentially, so they're not getting those health benefits. I think I have a minute or two just to go over the uses of natural capital, of our natural capital accounts. So the UK, we do have a strong internal infrastructure for supporting economic appraisal of public policy, but to improve the visibility of the environment in cost-benefit analysis, the England Ministry, DEFRA, the England Environment Ministry, sorry, DEFRA, have set up something called an enabling natural capital approach, and it just natural capital accounts, our natural capital accounts are a key part of that, not just in terms of the physical data and the monetary data that we provide, but also the methods, the methodology. We take part in cross-government networks. For example, there's a nature evaluation expert group, and we sit on that and sort of push our data is probably too strong a word, but we promote our data. We've linked in with the UK's Beyond GDP programme to make sure that our data is used in there, and also more recently with an inclusive wealth programme that is happening in a project that is happening within the UK. But equally, we like to try and engage the public. So here's just a couple of examples of how we've taken our ecosystem services and taken sort of research that almost falls out of it. So on the left here, as a way of just engaging the public, is an example of a tool that was built where you can pop in your property price and where your postcode is, and that will tell you how much value has been added to your property by the green space that is available. So that's a good way of engaging the public. And then on the right, it's a similar thing, but you pop in your postcode and then it'll tell you how much pollution has been removed by vegetation in this area and how much healthcare costs have been saved. So there's some good examples there. But ultimately, we know this is the macroeconomic tool, and the ultimate aim is to get decision makers to consider natural capital in their macroeconomic decision making. We know that things like SNA 2025 will help move towards that, but we do continually are thinking of ways that we can work with our Treasury and the Bank of England to enable this to happen. I think that's my last. Have I overrun? So the future really is just to say I've mentioned quite a bit throughout, we're continuing to develop our services and look at where we are. There is a real demand for granularity of data, so we're looking to consider how that can happen. And again, then the macroeconomic linkage really, and how we can help decision makers to use this data. Thank you, that's it. I've slightly overrun, I think.
No, don't worry. We're actually doing quite well for time. So
okay, great.
We've got a good sort of 15 minutes or so now to have some general discussion. Thanks so much. Just a couple of things that came to mind for me while you were talking is that South Africa's Natural Capital series that Chile talked about, lots of hearts and applause for you. That is also, those are published as discussion documents rather than official statistics. So that's something that, yeah, across Ireland and the UK and South Africa, it just gives the NSO a bit more flexibility, which is interesting and hopefully inspiring to others. Yes, and then very inspiring to see that annual time series of a lot of ecosystem services, and also to mention that for those who don't know, as part of developing the metadata for indicator B1 for the GBF, which is the one that deals with ecosystem services, we did some testing work of the proposed index with using data from countries that already have ecosystem services accounts. And that time series from the UK was extremely useful in testing that. So it's contributed to globally as well. And then, Gemma, just a question that has been put for you in the chat is, does the account include all fish species, the fish account, or only the main ones? And what is the time frame for that account?
So as I understand it, colleagues on the line are actually typing madly for me now, but I think it covers all species. The time differs by service. So I think it's a 2-year lag on the overall number and then a 1-year time lag for some services. Fish has a 2-year time lag. So in 2023, we've published 2021 data. But I will make sure I can add any, extra to the Q&A if there's more information.
Right. I'm seeing now a little note here that says Jessica Chan would like to answer this question live for the fish question, but I suspect it might be for a different question.
Sorry, Mandy. No, I was just clicking the button to indicate that it was going to be answered live.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry. We're getting used to this. And then, Gemma, another question for you is, can you name concrete examples of which service accounts are more ready for policymakers and which are not developed as far yet, i.e. more challenging?
So I think some of ours are available at a local level. So this is the thing, that the granular ones are proved to be more popular. So local authorities in the a smaller area can use some of our greenhouse gas emission ones because that's available at the local authority. I believe there are some the agriculture is used in farm policy, but I'll have to check. But they're all essentially suitable. We don't include them if they're not. It's just giving that indication of quality. Oh, my colleague is telling me agriculture is not used. So I apologize for that. Yeah, some are just better than others, essentially. So all of them are published under the official statistics for development. It's just whether we can take them off to be in that steady state. And what we possibly will do is take the overall badge off, but leave some of the services with a higher level of warning around the data. That's possibly the way forward in the long run.
Okay. Great, thanks. I also just wanted to go to Hai-Jin's question about where are the areas that need most specific support. Sorry, Gemma, this is not for you. And I wondered if some of our UNSD colleagues wanted to just say a little bit about what capacity development support exists in general for SIA ecosystem accounting. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but Ilaria, Marco, Jessica, Mike, do you want to just let people know what's available?
Yes, Mandy, no problem. Can add a little bit to that. So regarding capacity building, UNSD has quite a lot of online resources. We have e-learning modules and trainings. I believe there was a link put in the chat for all to see. So it's easily also findable on our website. So all the different parts of SIA have their own e-learning. They are also available in many different languages, mostly the UN official languages. And also there's so in previous years we've run a lot of campaigns or programs on e-learning where we paired the self-paced modules, which are free and accessible to anyone at any time, with webinars from experts, and those are recorded and available for you to watch, and we will do so in the future. We also partnered many times with SIAP in Japan, and they've together with them we've done a lot of these trainings and also disseminated their global trainings. I think part of the question from Hai-Jin was also on some technical expertise, or some additional technical expertise. And I would just want to add here, especially the SIA, the partnership with different agencies within the government, and even possibly, with private sector or academia, is very important and to the success of implementation of the SIA. So really these partnerships are really key to bring in the expertise that the NSOs do not have, related to ecology, ecology economics, or geospatial analytics in geospatial areas. So these are really areas that many of the NSOs might not have, and these partnerships with other agencies are key to the success of implementation. Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks very much, Marco. That was useful. And yes, and thanks, Gemma. Sorry, I kind of switched very quickly from you to Marco. I That's great. We do have quite a bit of time still, a good 10 minutes or so for further discussion. And I'm not seeing other specific questions for Gemma. There's also a more general question here from Andrea about, and I'm not sure who might be able to answer this, whether there are, so in the SEER biophysical modeling guidelines that were published a while ago, in that, are there any practical experiences regarding the tier 3 application level, i.e. the local level, particularly interested in flood provision, erosion control, and water purification services? I'm not sure if there's anyone here who have that information at their fingertips. Marco, are you?
Thanks, Mandy. On the top of my head, I'm not aware of any, and I'm not saying that there aren't any. I'm just not aware. Probably there'll be quite a lot of ecological literature that might include some application of these models in just general science. And there might be some countries that have implemented some of these. I don't know if any of our 4 countries have dealt with any of these specific. They're probably better placed if they have. Thanks.
Okay, maybe I think presenters are able to put up their hands. So if any of our presenters want to add in any of these questions, please do just raise your hand or put your video on. Gemma, another question for you is from Peter, is what are your key lessons learned and possible pitfalls related to monetary valuation of ecosystem services? And I wondered if you could comment on that.
So in terms of methods, or I guess it's the available. So we have quite a lot of physical data is available from the ground up, but the monetary data isn't. So that's sometimes a challenge. So we are only able to get that at the national level. So that, yeah, that can provide a challenge because we know there's this demand really at the lower level of geography. That's probably. Yeah. Unless there's a specific service or specific, in which case, feel free to type in the chat and I can.
Okay, great. So no, and just generally, what's your sense of kind of lessons or challenges with monetary valuation, not necessarily in relation to a particular service?
I don't know if we've necessarily faced major challenges in the monetary. I think I don't know, my colleague Adam is typing to me and I don't know whether he'd be best to come on the line. He's saying the challenges in the difference between the exchange basis and the welfare-based economics. So we need different prices needed and that can lead to confusion. So that's the major, but actually I don't think we've had, for our side, it has been sometimes the data availability.
Okay, great. So just to say that a little bit more slowly for people other people is just that the SEER approach to monetary valuation is based on exchange values and environmental economics uses welfare values. So that's something just important to tease out. I think that's useful to highlight. I want to just, if people have got questions, particularly possibly people who had a question that's been answered, but that you'd like to explore further for any of our presenters, maybe could I ask all of our presenters just to put your video on, and yeah, because I see our presenters have been quite efficient in answering questions, but people who asked them might still want some additional information. So for those who asked questions, feel free to come back to them with a new question if you'd like to. Okay, we have a question from Sarah. I think this might again, Gemma, be for you, but others feel free to also, other presenters, to ask. to answer is what's the best practice for assigning monetary value to ecosystem services where the benefits are not tangible? For example, carbon sequestration, water quality, etc.
So for carbon, we use a market value. So.
Great. And I think the best practice would depend on what the ecosystem service was.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I should really point out, we do publish detailed methodology. So I'll see if I can dig it out and pop it in the chat so people can see by service what we've done.
Okay. And it is also available, I imagine, on your website.
Yeah.
Okay. And we also have a general and quite complex question from Hejin on, is there any development around GDP transformation to account for natural capital better, capitalizing on the implementation of SEA ecosystem accounting? I think that's, a very broad question. I'm not sure that I would want to put any of our presenters on the spot to answer that. But any thoughts from anyone that you do want to share? Okay. Maybe that's a topic for a different whole webinar in its own right. Okay, so I think let's maybe head towards wrapping up. And I wanted to just give a couple of reflections from me over the sort of from these 4 different presentations. The first of which is just that it's really amazing to see this kind of real productivity around producing ecosystem accounts in a range of different contexts, and it's socioeconomic contexts, ecological, institutional. So, one sees that it is doable, and there is a lot of activity going on around production of ecosystem asset and ecosystem services accounts, which is wonderful to see. And then also that, we've got the focus that's in this webinar of linking specifically to the accounts that are going to underpin the 2 headline indicators for the Global Biodiversity Framework. But it's very clear from the presentations that these accounts are not just useful for the GBF headline indicators, and that they have a whole range of applications nationally for planning and policy and monitoring. Another thing that struck me is that I think that what we have is a situation where there's some conceptual differences in how ecosystems are defined, ecosystem types particularly, and done differently in all 4 of the examples. And I think what's an important opportunity to note here is that now that we have the global ecosystem typology, which is really quite new, it's a recently approved and adopted framework for classifying ecosystem types, that was not available when a lot of the work that we've seen presented here was started. But I think there's an opportunity to use that framework to try and get some more consistency across countries around conceptually how ecosystem types are conceptualized and then mapped. And of course, the challenge that we have at the moment is that many countries will have is to correspond their national ecosystem types with level 3 in the global ecosystem typology that Marco spoke about in his introductory presentation for the purpose of harmonized global reporting. So yes, I'm just aware that is an issue that we're going to have to grapple with as a community over the next few years, and heading into the first reporting of those GBF indicators. So I think it's both a challenge and an opportunity to get greater consistency and harmonize the way that we can report on ecosystems. And then another reflection is just what's also evident across all the cases is that the data layers, the spatial data sets that underpin ecosystem accounts come from a very wide range of different government agencies. And they're not produced in-house by national statistical offices. And as a few of you have highlighted, that creates a kind of institutional challenge, and is not yeah, no easy solutions to that. And I'm sure that NSOs will also be learning around how to deal with that. So yeah, drawing on those different data sets is a key part of building ecosystem accounts. And then lastly, I just think what's also so striking about this is the value of hearing from different country perspectives. And we would love to create more opportunities to do that. This webinar series will continue, and I think the next one is planned for August, September, after the Northern Hemisphere has its summer break. But if we'd love to hear from you, if you have ideas about how we can share lessons between countries. I think there may be opportunities outside of this webinar series for things like bilateral exchanges. I know, for example, South Africa and Zambia recently had a very useful kind of 3-day bilateral exchange. And yeah, those sorts of opportunities might exist, and opportunities at the regional level. And we would love participants to fill in our quick survey on the webinar, which I think the link to that will be in the chat. I'm not sure. I see, yeah, it's just gone into the chat. So we really would value your feedback. It looks like we're going to end a few minutes early. So if you can use that last 5 minutes to fill in our feedback survey, we really would be very grateful. So yes, I think with that, let me just say a big thank you to especially to our presenters who did such a wonderful job, and to all of you for participating and for your questions. Thanks so much. Hopefully see you at the next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.